Shall I go? Oh.
Right. So, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Right, ladies and gents, welcome back everyone to our public lecture series. I really hope everyone is doing good this morning. To remind you a bit, this lecture is organized by Language, Gender and Media course for 7th semester students at the English Literature Department in Surakarta, where I myself act as a lecturer here. And for those who are new here, feel free to participate, be active, and ask a question as the classroom is inclusively open for any participants. So yeah, it's nice to meet you, newcomers. Today, we'll be discussing a very dazzling topic called media changes and its future. They will be led by a brilliant woman, an inspiring friend of mine. She's the one and only Aghnia Adzkia. Hello, Aghnia. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm doing great. Thank you for inviting me. It's such an honor for me to be here.
Right, no problem. Anyway, how do you want us to call you? Is it Kak, Mbak, Bu, Miss, or what?
Jangan Bu dong, Mbak aja, Mbak Nia.
All right, we are still young, right? So probably Kak. Right, yeah. I'll call you Kak this time. Okay. So yeah, it's been years not meeting you in person, right? I think the last time I met you in person was 4 years ago, if I'm correct.
Yeah. I think 4 years ago.
I'm super happy that I can meet you today on this virtual occasion. So guys, after covering several topics regarding gender and feminism a couple of weeks ago, we are now moving on to the media. In the following weeks, we'll see how language and gender are often collided with the media. But today, we'll start by getting to know how the media itself works, what happened with the media day by day, and what seems to be the future of the media. And to cover today's interesting topics, I see Kak Aghnia as the best person who can explain this in a more comprehensive way. And that's not without any reasons. Kak Aghnia just graduated from Universitas Gadjah Mada, majoring political science, communication, journalism, and related programs in 2013. And she then pursued her master's at Goldsmiths, University of London, majoring MSc in digital journalism and graduated in 2017. And now she works as a senior visual and data journalist at BBC World Service for East Asia Hub. So we are honored to for Aghnia for joining us today. And so yeah, without further ado, let me just invite Aghnia to the main session. Aghnia, it's your time now to give us some enlightenment today. Please take your time.
Thank you, Kak Wildy, for such a nice introduction. Hello all, good morning. I'm Aghnia, you can call me Nia for short, as mentioned by Kak Wildy. And I'm a data journalist of the BBC World Service. I'm covering East Asia region. So I work with BBC in China, South Korea, Thailand, Burmese, Vietnam, and of course, Indonesia. So my work mainly about data, so data storytelling, data analysis, and data visualization. Okay, so now I'm going to present my slides. So bear with me for a second. Okay, there you go. So I'm not a media history expert, but I'm trying to explain you about the changes of media and how its future from my experience as well. So I've been doing journalism stuff since I think 2013. So it's been about 8 years now. Not such a long time though, but I've experienced many changes within the media industry itself. And I ended up here at the BBC with expertise in data. So let's talk about the changes over time. So maybe you've learned this like somewhere. So I've grabbed this from the BBC website. So you might have like jumped into the page for a couple of reasons. So in 14th centuries, so there was a printing press. I remember when I studied in the University of Gajah Mada. So I read a book about Gutenberg machine that changed the way we consume media, changed the way we read, changed the way the flow of communication itself at that time. So news could be written down and the exact same version could be shared with lots of people. This was something new at that time. So then radio became a thing in 1896 when people could hear the news at the same time. So before it was like there was a delay when people consume media, but started in 1896, people could hear the news at the same time when it happened. So as you know, recall breaking news. So at that time we had that for the radio delivery. So then the shifting changed. In 1954, there was a TV program. So as you know, like the BBC has, the BBC, one of the oldest TV station across the world, I guess. So at that time, the BBC launched its first ever television news program. This meant that people could not only hear the news, but see pictures. So starting from the text, only text, and then the audio, and then started in 1950s, we could not only consume text and audio, but also the visual itself, which brought at the time a lot of like different experiences, of course. And 1989, the World Wide Web started to launch, and a lot of like publication or media started to look for opportunities, how the media could be delivered across the world, not only just for people living in the nearby area. For example, like TV program, if it is not digital, then you had to be like in the certain amount of distance so you can watch the program itself. So the emergence of the World Wide Web brought different, of course, level of experience. And that is what we are nowadays experiencing. So Tim Berners-Lee was one of the founders of the W3, which allowed people from across the globe, including newspapers and broadcasters, to share information on web page. But as you know, like the emergence of the World Wide Web was not something really implemented short away in Indonesia itself. It took about like 10 to 15 years to emerge. And a lot of, at that time in 2000-ish, so the media, online media started to become a thing in Indonesia, and we had a lot of online media in Indonesia. So as you know, I'm sure you all know about this, but I just wanted to remind you all that there are three types of main media: print, broadcast, and online. But you know, because of the convergence and multi-platform idea or concept, these three are now blurring each other. So we can also have broadcast content on online media as well. For example, you can watch video on your mobile phone through a website, or even you can listen to radio on your mobile phone through a website as well, or web application. No, not web application though, mobile application. But it's always good to have a look at the history. So when we talk about newspaper history in Indonesian context, I would not tell about global context because it might be too wide for you guys. So when we talk about newspaper history, we had Suara Priai, Cahaya, or other, what we call it, media perjuangan. at that era when we had not have independence in 1945. But after the independence, we had Kedaulatan Rakyat, which I'm sure, since you're based in Solo, you are familiar with a newspaper which has its headquarters in Yogyakarta. So Kedaulatan Rakyat started in 27th of September in 1945 with its first edition, Indonesia Merdeka adalah Cipta Indonesia Sendiri. So it was sold 1,000 exemplar, and the next day the circulation skyrocketed like 3 times. So that was a huge momentum for the newspaper. And Kompas, as we know, one of the biggest media industry in Indonesia, had its own harian or daily newspaper on 24th of June, 4th of June, 1965. And after that, since then, it has become one of the most influential newspaper in the New Order, and even until now, after Reformation era. So we also had Majalah Tempo in 1970, founded by Express journalists. So if you're familiar with Gunawan Muhammad, one of the founding fathers of the magazine, so he used to work with the Express publication or media, but there was a split in political or in ideology. Then he resigned and founded the brand new magazine, which later on nowadays became important in every political word in Indonesia. Okay, I quoted this from Janet Steele, professor of journalism at George Washington University in the United States. So she said about the resignation of Indonesian President Suharto in 1998 and ended 32 years of authoritarian rule and launched a new era of reformasi. This, along with the passage of the landmark 1999 press law, which I'm sure you all know, with its attendant code of ethics and creation of an independent press council. So that becomes like a major thing in Indonesia at that time. And even for now, if we compare it to like other Southeast Asian countries, Indonesia has still become one of the leader in press freedom, even though not that like high achievement, in a way that we still have lots of cases related to the press freedom. We still have journalists arrested because of their stories, and we still have a lot of people being dragged to the jail with Undang-Undang ITE. But still, if we compare it to other countries in the region, we are still one of the leaders. So I've covered a lot of stories in Burmese, in Myanmar. So this was the worst, one of the worst situation in the country, when press were silenced and journalists were arrested. I had a friend of mine from BBC Burmese who once was arrested when he was covering a story of the military coup, and he went to the field, he filmed, and he took a picture of himself in a way that he filmed it for the publication, but he was arrested right away after the reportage with a couple of his friends in the field. But later on, after several negotiations, he was freed and not in jail anymore. But still, like the situation there was horrible in compared to Indonesia, when we have now as a journalist like free movement, or free movement to cover some stories, even like very sensitive stories. But well, without neglecting one of the recent cases about the police that had been what a police case about sexual harassment that has been trapped down in one of the publication, that also one of the weakness of the press freedom in the country. But if we look at the bright side, then we still have a lot of opportunities to cover stories as a journalist. When we talk about Thailand, then I don't know if you're familiar with this or not, but it is a monarchy country that it has a king. I can say he's more like authoritarian style of king, which also silenced some of the journalists covering protests against the monarchy within recent months. We don't have that sort of things as well in Indonesia. But of course, if we compare Indonesia to other countries, like for example, the UK or the US, we have still a lot of like homeworks or a lot of challenges to face. Okay, that's about press freedom. Anyway, if you have any question, just raise your hand when I talk. It's super fine, then we can have a discussion. Otherwise, if you want to keep it like till the end of the session, that will be fine. We will have a question and answer session after this. Okay, so talking about radio history, and when we haven't had independence yet, there was a Dutch radio called Batavia's Radio Vereniging, or PRC, owned by the Dutch to broadcast its own political interest and trade. So in 1933, like about 7 or 8 years later, there were young people who thought that the radio could be one of the media perjuangan, which later could deliver the message of fighting the independence of the country. It's called Soloshe Radio Vereniging. And that was playing a role as a competitor of the Dutch channel that I mentioned earlier. And during the independence, a radio broadcaster called Yusuf Ronodipuro created an independent transmitter to deliver its independent message from Sukarno to Indonesia and across the world, of course. And then later on, by each of the local media in the country, for example, in Sumatera Barat, they had RRI, which broadcasted the message from Sukarno, the independence message from Sukarno to local people there. So firstly, it was a independent transmitter, and then they kind of like echoing the message to other people in local area by having like local radio broadcasted the message. And then on September 1945, it was officially launched. The RRI went on air for the first time and became one of the radio perjuangan, I can say. RRI, they were there before and became massive afterwards, after 1945. Okay, talking about TV station history. So there wasn't much before the Reformation era because we only had one like state-owned television station, which is called FRE. I'm sure you all know. And in 1989, RCTI also started to broadcast as the second TV station in the country, but it didn't have that big like role in compared to the FRI as a TV station. And in 1990, SCTV became the third TV station, then was followed by TPI. I'm not sure if you are familiar with TPI, but when I was a child, that was a moment that we enjoy some program on the TV station. But I think when you were a kid, that wasn't anymore. In 1991, so it was launched. And after Reformation, we now recognize or know what we call it news television, because it became popular with the establishment of Metro TV in 2001, and then later on followed by TV1 and many other news television stations. So as I mentioned earlier in the beginning of this session, when we talk about online media, so it wasn't a thing in 1989. It took like about 10 to 15 years to become popular here in Indonesia. So, but before 2000-ish, there were some online media, though it wasn't that popular, but there were. So Republica Online was launched in 1995, and later in the year, kompas.co.id was on air, which later changed or shifted into Kompas.com. Okay, and then in 1998, there was detik.com. And with the new style, fast, short, and update stories became the pattern of online journalism in the country. Well, to be honest, I don't really like the style of the way the detik.com wrote a story when if they have like this limited amount of sources, even though that's short, they needed to like publish it as fast as possible so that other competitors would not be able to compete them. So that's how the detik.com work. I don't like it, but even though I don't like it, that became popular and that became a style in online media, which later on, if the message was wrong, then they can correct it easily, which I don't think that's stick to the rule of writing stories. Okay, so if I wrap up, there are like 7 media conglomerates in Indonesia. So nowadays, so we have Khairul Tanjung with his own City Corp, and then Haritanu with Global Media, Edi Sariatmajo with Amtech, James Riyadi with Lipo Group. If you're familiar with Berita Satu, that's one of his TV station. And then Jacob Utama, of course, with Kompas, Bakri with TV1, Dahlan Iskan Jawa Post, one of the biggest like conglomerate in terms of newspaper industry as well. And of course, Surya Paloh with his Metro TV. When we talk about television and media in political perspective, then we can have a few, I can have a few, that now media becomes a channel for those pursuing their career in political world. For example, Khairul Tanjung, Abu Rizal Bakri, Surya Paloh, and Haritanu. Media become tools for them to campaign themselves in during election or after the election to, you know, like boost their popularity on community or in audience. Okay. So after 20 years, Indonesia has more than 300-ish online media, and the media consumption behavior is shifting from television in the early 2000-ish to 2010 to online media and social media from 2010 onwards. And now I'm sure all of you have a social media account, which sometimes you have a lot of or followed publication or media social handle. For example, on Instagram, you might follow BBC or Tirto or any other media. And that was one of the channels you consume news or stories. Okay, when we look at this graph from Deloitte Insight, I might be categorized as millennials, but I think all of you, like the participants and the students, except Kak Wildy, might be categorized as Generation Z. So there was a bit of difference between those two generations, even with the baby boomers. As you can see, the shifting here from television on the right chart, which like consumed a lot by the baby boomers, because that was the one of the media platform they used to know and they consumed a lot during their, you know, young age. And when we look at the left side, so a lot of Generation Z tend to enjoy media through video or through music or even browse the internet. And how is the trend and what the media will bring you in the future? In 2017, one of the like popular publication and leading publication in the world, The Economist, started a survey and then they released it. They thought that data in video would be something major in terms of trends in media industry, which I'm sure like for now, 4 years later, data and video still dominate the content of the media itself. So this is a report from Reuters Digital News in 2021, when TV not again dominate the sources of news to consume for Indonesian people. So this one has Indonesian context. Apologize. So the one who dominates is online, including social media. Devices, I think there was a shift as well from computer or laptop to a smartphone, or smartphone actually. So I spend most of the time when I don't work, or always on mobile phone as well. So it's become natural thing to have your mobile phone with you like 24 hours even for some people. Okay, so when we talk about the media, what's the most popular here in Indonesia? Still, as I said, the tik.com has become a pattern in online media industry. Yes, it is still become one of the most consumed online media, 65%. And then BBC, unfortunately, where I work, only has a this little amount of audience sharing, 15%, because we have very like segmented audience in compared to the tik.com, who has wider or broader audience demography. When we talk about TV, radio, and print, TV1, Metro TV still dominate the competition, with half of the Indonesian respondents in the survey consume programs from those two TV stations. Okay, so now what's the trend in online media? I'll be quick, then we can have a lot of discussion after that. So in 2010s, multi-platform became popular, as well as online, radio, podcast, digital video, all in one go when we have an online or a website of the publication itself. So I remember when I worked with CNN in 2015, that was, I guess, 6 years ago. 5 to 6 years ago. So I was taught not only writing stories for online media, which the output is a text, but I also was encouraged to film something when I report a case. So I used to work and cover stories, cover corruption and law issues. So my base was in KPK. So KPK office, I used to like sit there almost 8 hours a day to cover stories, to cover corruption issues. So not only KPK though, but also Pengadilan Tipikor, or Tindak Pidana Korupsi, or Corruption Court, which back then it was located nearby the KPK. It's only like on the same road. You can walk just 10 minutes away from KPK office. So I used to cover a lot of like corruption court cases as well. So when I remember when there was a verdict reading of one of the prominent political figure, I don't remember the name, but I wasn't only writing a story of him being sentenced to jail, but I also filming him and editing the video through my mobile phone and dubbing the voiceover. If you're familiar with the term of voiceover, that means that you have to like reading some script for video. So I used to work that a lot in a way that I didn't only write the text piece, but also filming and producing a digital video for CNN website. So that became a thing at that moment. When I started that experience or that work in 2015, not a lot of journalists were aware of the situation in a way that they didn't know that journalists could do things in the same way or at the same way. I was also being, like, I don't know the term in English, apologize. I used to be diejek or teased by other journalists. Why would you do that? Why would you also text and filming the video? But nowadays I saw a lot of people, a lot of journalists as well, especially Tribun journalists or other journalists when they went to the field, they also not only writing stories, but also filming some digital video and produce it when they were in the field. So that means that journalists are required to have multimedia skills. So if by any chance any of you would like to be a journalist, now I'm encouraged to not only like having one skill, but having like multiple skills. For example, you can write a story, you can interview sources, but you can also like producing a video, or maybe if you're like keen on learning about data or learning about technical things that requires your technology knowledge, then that would be an asset for you to apply for a job. Okay, so in 2015 onwards, technology-based development dominated the trend and became a thing in the media industry. For example, data journalism, chatbot, automatization, augmented reality, and virtual reality. This terminology might not familiar for you, but I will try to explain it like one by one. This is one of like the most interesting part of the presentation, because I'm so into technology development, and also about the programming and the coding and so on. I'm always into that, so it's always interesting and exciting me to even like elaborate or to learn about those things. So I will start with data-driven journalism. So data-driven journalism is one of the future in the industry. So journalists need to be data savvy, as mentioned by Tim Berners-Lee, the founder of the World Wide Web. It used to be that you would be getting some stories by chatting people in the bars, not bars, if in Indonesian context, maybe in warkop or warung kopi. And it still might be that you'll do that way sometimes. So that was a shift started in 2017, I guess, Indonesia, or 2016, or even like way before that. So when journalists, if they would like to cover a story, they need to know like what's the events happening like surrounding them. For example, if they cover in Jakarta, then what events happening in Jakarta, or even issue, we can run issues. For example, for this, I think I read this morning about parking price, which skyrocketed to 100,000 to 150,000 rupiah in one of touristic area in Lembang, Bandung. So that was one issue that went viral on social media. So it used to be journalists could also just looking at social media or looking at or hearing from other people about some issues, and then they wrote a story. But I think for now, if you would like to survive in the media industry, you need to have another level of skills, which one of them is data. Okay, how does data journalism work in the newsroom? So when we talk about conventional journalism, you can only have point 1, 2, and 6. So you need to find a topic, discussing the topic with your editors maybe, or with your sources, and then do the reporting, interviewing sources, doing the research, and write down the stories, or even like producing the digital video, as I mentioned earlier. But for data journalists, it needs to be like this amount of stages. It doesn't have to be like this order. Usually you can have collecting data stage in the beginning, and then you might have some interesting topic to cover. or you can start with the finding the topic and then discussing the topic with your editors and then start to gathering the data itself. But these stages are important and are necessary to have when you produce a data-driven stories. You need to have skill on collecting data, analyze data, visualize data as well, and then do the reporting. So a lot of people, like when I have a lecture or a training or a workshop, a lot of people might ask, like, what's the difference between you and other journalists? Then I would explain these stages should be completed when you want to be a data journalist. So if you don't have the collecting data skills or analyzing analytical skills or visualization skills, then you can't really like call you as a data journalist. I will show you like what kind of stories that we publish as data journalists and compared to other conventional, or I can say old style of journalism pieces. So in some newsroom, there are having some teams as well for producing data-driven content. For example, at the BBC where I work, we have a designer and developer and journalists in the same team to produce data-driven stories. For example, myself, I would be the leading person to have or to search for ideas and questions and to do the analysis, and then designer would help me to visualize the data. So I have the concept and then I bring it to the designer, and they will be the ones who execute the concept itself. So the developer would be needed if we have a complicated, like a custom page for online media. I will show you later on what I call it, a custom page. Okay, this is one of the stories that I wrote when we have a plane crash accident back in 2021, early 2021. Maybe some of you are familiar with the case, with the accident itself. So when I wrote this story, I wasn't like writing the event itself or the chronological order of the accident, but I also analyzed the flight path of the plane. So as you can see, there was a differences between the previous path of the flights and when on the day of the crash happened here. So what can I conclude from this analysis was the plane assumed to have a disorientation when the pilot was directed to go to this line, but then he was having disorientation and then tried to, like figuring out which way should he move forward. Then the plane fell apart to the ocean. Okay, you might have a clearer idea by watching this video. Let me just hope it works fast. It depends on my internet connection. So if you can see here, so I drag the KML data, one of the format data for mapping, and then put it on Google Earth, and then it will show you the path of the flight when it happened. It has also like altitude data, so you can have a visualization in mind about how the plane crashed, started from daytime during takeoff here from the Jakarta Soekarno-Hatta International Airport, and then not far away, and then the plane fell apart here. Okay, so that's one of the differences between conventional journalism piece to the data journalism pieces. Okay, I might have to skip this. So this is one of the stories that I work together with a team as well. So this is in-depth data-driven stories. When you look at satellite images analysis the hotspot that appear inside a oil palm plantation area or concession in Papua. So you have to have an analytical skills and using some mapping tools to nail as a data journalist. Okay, apologize for the noises in the background, but I think, yeah, that's fine. Okay, this is data-led investigations. We had Panama Papers, or the recent one we have also Pandora Papers that works similar, and some high or elite political figures try to hide their money by saving it in a bank in Panama, one of the like hidden gem country for rich people, because it's such a tax haven country. Okay, so another trend is chatbot. So you will have as you can see here on the right picture, Liputan 6 has a chatbot that allows you to talk with a system when you would like to access mis or disinformation fact check stories. So if you want to like verify whether this was true or not, this is true or not, then you can have a chat with the chatbot itself. It's something, it becomes something popular to media industry and media publication. So for the BBC, the implementation of chatbot varied, not only for the what is it called, like chatbot through WhatsApp to verify some mis or disinformation, but it also gives you another opportunity to play around with this. I will just take you to one of this. So this one is a project by Crossing Divides team inside the BBC, when you can pretend to be one of the characters here, and you have sort of like discussion with the system, or with the bot, or with the robot itself. So let's say you are Erika. I can just show you, like I will play around with it, not in details, but in my presentation you can have a link that refers to the story, so you can play around with it later on. So this is about Brexit, which is something very popular in the country, in Great Britain, and you pretend to be someone talking with someone about the Brexit issue. When you click, oops, I think it stocks. Let me just refresh the page. Oh, it's here, start the conversation. So there it will show you like some chats here. You can have one of them. Like, how would you start the conversation? I will just randomly pick this one. I didn't do anything though. It just automatically play like this. But you will have like certain options to pick. This one, pick a response. So you are not actually like talking to somebody, you are talking to a robot. And you can like pick one of them. I just randomly pick one. So this interactive experience will bring you to another level, not only consume stories or consume media the way you like conventionally consume by watching or by reading some stories, but this will allow you to have an experimental chat or talk with a robot. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So when we talk about the future trend as well, we have automatization, which use the knowledge of artificial intelligence. When I don't know if you have ever heard of this, but robot can write stories as humans do as long as we teach them how to write. So Los Angeles Times in the US was one of the, leading in robotorial journalism. So back in early 2010s, they had, I don't know the name of the robot itself, but they have a machine that write a story straight away about the earthquake. It's not LA Times is not the only one publication or one media who has produced such, but also the Washington Post robots even, they published 850 articles in the past year, which I'm sure not like single journalist could beat that number, could be that record. For example, for me, I write only like once a month for the in-depth stories. I would like impossibly reaching the number compared to the robot of the Washington Post. So they sometimes were programmed to write stories, specific stories, for example, earthquake, stock, or weather prediction, or any football match even. So in Indonesia, we have Beritagar. I used to work with Beritagar as well, like couple years ago, but now the media, I think, was gone, not available anymore, but it has robotorial that can produce not only football match prediction on football match result, but also stock and weather prediction, and also earthquake, even an earthquake happening in Indonesia. Okay, so we have also augmented reality when
Aghnia,
you
sorry to
combine.
interrupt.
Yeah.
You have 2 minutes left.
Oh, okay. I will be quick in 1 minute. Sorry that we don't have so much time to question and answer, but I can pass this to 8:40 is fine for me, if you don't mind to stay longer. So we have augmented reality as well when we combine visual elements, like 3D visual elements, to a reality, something like this. Or we have virtual reality as well. You can jump into the page later on if you'd like. This is very interesting experiments. When you can play around, you are invited. Sorry. I don't know if you can hear the sound here, but I can hear it, but you can go to the page later on. You are invited to a small room in a cell that has like 6x4 size of the room, and you can experience being prisoners inside a cell, like a prison or a jail. And then you will have the experiments, 360 experiments, if you wear like a specific goggles, specific lens that bring you to experience this. So you can play around with this as well. This is the trailer, but when you go down, you can have 360 video here. I think it loads. But anyway, I won't play this. You can play around later on. And then the last time we have 3D web features, the last thing, sorry, we have 3D web features, which combines not only AR, augmented reality, or virtual reality, but it brings you another experiment. I think I'm sure I have the account, but anyway, so here you can have the experience inside. For example, for this specific topic, you can have an experience how the coronavirus spread when you are in a small room, or even in a flight or in a plane with a lot of people, and then it will have like a simulation or drops of visual prototypes that can have a brighter or a clearer imagination of how the drops transmit from one person to another person. So yeah, I think that's it. I'm sorry I'm not be able to to give you this page, to let you watch to this page. But later on, if you can have like the, you know, free, what is it, free, I'm sure if you have if you haven't like access New York Times more than 3 times, you can still have free access to it. So I think it's good websites to watch. Okay, I think that's all. Kak Wildy, apologize for taking so long. And hopefully I can have a lot of questions from you guys. Okay. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Kak Aghnia, for
Kak
sharing the
Wildy?
materials. Yeah, wow.
I think I can't really hear you. Wait a second.
Really? Check.
Oh yeah, it's cool.
Okay.
It's cool now.
Yeah, I think we all agree that we are amazed by your presentation. We sort of listening to the morning news broadcasted by BBC. You just resonated the British vibes over here. Very well. It makes sense why you became journalist now. All right, Kak Aghnia just explained how the media existed in the past and kept changing over time. She then mentioned the newspaper history, mainly in Indonesia, initiated by Kedaulatan Rakyat, Kompas, and Majalah Tempo. So there was an emergence of media reports from the radio, TV station, and online media. And nowadays, in the online media, a journalist needs to be very skillful and can do multitasking jobs such as finding topic, discussing it, collecting data, analyzing, visualizing, and reporting. And it is also mentioned that data-driven journalism will be our future, as well as the automatization, which is very interesting if we discuss it later. So now we are moving on to the Q&A session. I think I'll open one session first for Q&A. There will be 3 participants who can ask. If you want to ask something, please turn on your camera if it's possible. Say your name, which institution you're from, and mention your question in a concise way. Okay, the question and answer session is now open. Please ask something if you want.
Kayaknya ada yang angkat tangan.
Ya, silakan. Pertanyaannya bisa dalam bahasa Indonesia, campur-campur atau bahasa Inggris. Ya.
Bahasa Jawa juga boleh.
Bahasa Jawa juga boleh. Oh, Bliwayan, how are you doing, Bliwayan? I need to welcome Bliwayan from UNJ, a lecturer of English from Universitas Negeri Jakarta. Ya. Welcome.
Hello.
I think I saw you last week, but
sorry about last week. I wasn't able to join the discussion. Really sorry.
Sure. Okay, if you want to ask something, Bliwayan, please ask. Oke, silakan kalau teman-teman ada yang mau bertanya.
Wih, ada 4 orang.
Oke, 4. I'll start from Bening dulu deh.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Bening Salsabila. I'm sorry, it's a bit noisy here. Okay, my question for Kak Nia is, what do you think about some of the mainstream media platform that they decided to change their direction into informing something that kind of irrelevant with news? I think I found some their social media official account that shares like celebrity gossip, such a thing. Even people in the comment section is is this supposed to be shared here? Which I found it pretty bothers because it kind of far from the essence of the news itself. So what do you think of this phenomenon? Thank you.
Should I answer it like straight away or we need to wait? Okay. So when the media that you are talking about is a news television or a news publication, news media that has brand themselves, like calling themselves as a news media, then we need to question that in a way that are the stories relevant or not. But if from the beginning, the media itself not limiting their stories into political news or national news or even like legal issues, I think it's up to them to like publish stories, entertainment stories or such. So I think it depends on their ideology as well, and the way they would tell the stories. So it depends. If they started at the beginning as news media, then we need to question, and we need to be more critical. And you are absolutely right about it. And for some audience might be bothered about the stories itself. But if they call themselves as, not very specific news media, it's really up to them to tell stories the way they would like. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Aghnia, for answering the question. And now we move on to Bliwayan, please. Bliwayan.
Thank you for Hilde. Hello, Mbak Aghnia. Nice to meet you here.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Yeah. Well, it's actually interesting for me, listening throughout your presentation before. You've covered a lot, starting from, you begin with media practices in the past, then moving on to how media covers news in today's era and so on. And also lots of issues related to media, especially the one being asked before by the student. I was wondering about, and this is quite related to the other what student asked before about media, especially online media today. How is it important actually when media needs to engage online audience? I'm really thinking about the diverse audience and the diversified audience. Actually, how can media really know the interest or the general interest of these online audience, despite the fact that this audience is unknown? We never know what their interests are. It's really interesting for me because media can really engage these people despite the fact that they don't really know who they are and what their interests are. Perhaps you have something to say about that.
So I think the key answer to that would be research. So audience research. I don't know if like a lot of media here in Indonesia do such, but in my publication where I work, we do have a sort of audience research when we map like who are the readers. So there are some tools that we use for that. So we can have the actual, from their behavior, from their online behavior, we can categorize this audience as probably young people, women, age, for example, 20 to 30, and then what are their interests. We have those kind of tools to map the audience. And then once we have the result of the audience research, we can later on engage with what certain topics they would like to read more or to watch more, to consume more. And that way that can drive the stories that we write. So I usually, when we talk inside the BBC, we often talk about women issues because that's one of the main topic to be covered throughout the globe. So when you have a story directed to women and young age, then you will have like a plus point to to write a story, because that's one of our target audience, because based on the research, based on the audience research that we have done before, a lot of more women consume BBC than men, and then young audience consume more than the old people. So I think audience research would be a key. Those tools can identify your online behaviors to be categorized to certain groups. Hope that answered your questions.
Yes, it did.
Okay,
right.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So I think the media right now is not only targeted to the old, reading newspaper while sipping the coffee and eat gorengan, right? So it's for all, including the youth. Okay, then now please, Lucy Al-Fathu, if you want to ask something.
Can you hear me, sir?
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wildy, and also Kak Aghnia for the opportunity. I will ask, I think I just want to ask your opinion as a journalist related to the issue that I want to mention is, so you state that at this time, Indonesian people, we have a freedom opportunity to deliver our opinion in public. But now we are restricted with the existence of UU ITE that makes us scared to just deliver our opinion or just to speak up for ourselves. And related to this, do you think that as a journalist, you are also affected by this UU ITE in doing your work in reporting news? I mean, are you also restricted to report some certain issues because of this law? And also, sorry, miss, for the noises.
No problem. I can get your question.
And also, my other question is, do you think in the future, journalists are still able to survive along with the technology improvement? For example, like what you have already mentioned before, with the existence of automatization program or robot that also could do some journalist job description. I think that's all, miss.
Thank you. Very good question. So the first thing, I would like to put this in context so you don't have like the explanation partly. So when I talk about we have freedom to cover stories, that means when I compare it to like other Southeast Asia region countries, like the Burmese or Myanmar or Thailand or Malaysia, if Indonesia is compared to like those countries, we still have more freedom to cover stories. We still can like give not opinion though, but facts with an analytical argument within the story. But yes, if we look back just Indonesia, not comparing to other countries, we still have some of what you call it restrictions to cover stories. For example, in 2015-ish, I guess, or 2016, I don't remember anymore. So when I cover a story like a conflict between Muslims and Christian in one of the remote island in Papua, one of the remote area in Papua called Tolikara, maybe you have you recall the stories because there was like a big conflict there. So I've covered a story for both parties, which has a long history, a long relationship, good relationship that could be tear apart straight away because of a small accident. So that's the headline of the story I wrote. But apparently not all of the people from both parties like my stories, and I received like threats, even death threats. I've received a lot of like mocking and a lot of like sensitive or not sensitive, even like more like angry comments from the readers. So I think that's one of the challenges when you cover a sensitive story in Indonesia. You might not like be liked by some parties which the story were included in your text or your news, and then you can of course be jailed for your stories. We still have those kind of limitations, but you know, in compared to like other countries, we still have more freedom. So yeah, hope that answers. And then for the second questions, yeah, as I mentioned, for journalists, you need to, if you want to be a journalist, you need to survive in a way that now it needs more skills rather than just writing stories or producing digital video. It needs you to be aware of the technological development and what kind of technology that has been used within the media industry or would be used by the media industry. For example, like the trend I mentioned earlier, if you nail one of them, then you can be like one of the journalists that be looked for by the media industry. For example, if you nail on data, so not all journalists can work with data. Even some of them avoid data when they took like communication major or journalism major in the university, because they don't want to study mathematics, they don't want to study economics, so that they took the major like social science major. But it ended up it requires you not only like have those conventional skills, but also those mathematical or analytical skills in order to be to survive in the media industry. So for example, I don't want to be, like, I don't want to be sombong or bluffing, but if you have data journalism skill, then you will have like higher bargaining position to the media industry. You can always like bargain your salary, for example. You can always have the opportunities to chip into like any media you wanted. For example, I've been over like a lot of jobs before I joining BBC. A lot of like media approached me to work with them as a data journalist because of the lacking of the people who really master on data-driven journalism. So that's one thing. But if you have another skills, for example, if you know how to do like 360 videos, as I shown you before, that could be an asset for you as well to survive. Hope that answers.
Okay, I think we still have 4 minutes left. One more question, possibly. Aghnia?
Yeah.
Okay. Which one of you, Camila or Corey? Raise hand first. Or maybe I'll give to Corey, okay? If it's okay, please, Corey.
Yeah, if we still have time, then we can jump into Camila question as well.
Okay, can you hear my voice, Miss? Okay, so what do you think about this? There are so many kinds of media, so for example, TV, radio, and some online media, and which one that you know that which one which is more valid in giving information to the audiences? And it is the first question, and for the second question is, we have a chatbot technology, and you mentioned it started from the year of 2015. And what do you think about the appealing of chatbot technology? Is it really helpful for the audiences to get more information?
Sorry, I think I don't get the second question. Kak Wildy, do you get it? Maybe you can explain it a bit more to me. Thank you.
You can restate your question. Yeah, Corey.
For the second question is, what do you think about the appealing of chatbot technology? Is it really helpful for the audiences? That's all. Thank you.
Okay, that's the second question. I will go to the second questions first because I forgot the first question. Okay, the second question is about chatbot. Is it really useful? Well, I don't really know it because I don't have the stats or the research showing like whether the Liputan 6 chatbot was very like, successful in terms of like attracting audience or not. But at least you can like, you can consume mis or disinformation stories that has been fact-checked before in different format. You used to only like reading stories or reading text on their website, on their platform, but through the chatbot you can like having an interactive talking or interactive chat with the robot itself to access the stories. Though I think by the end of the day you will be directed as well to the websites to see the stories, but at least you have the experience of talking with robot or having interactive experience with them. Okay, that's the second question. And then the first question would be, I don't know, sorry.
Your first question in a brief way, Corey, what is it? I cannot hear you clearly.
Which one is more valid?
Yeah.
Well, when we talk about the validity of the stories, I would not say like which platform, but I would say like how the editorial process, how the editorial work goes on. So when you read a story, then it has an editor names on it, and you can ask like several you can of course like cross-check the historical background of the editors, whether they have put like very unverified stories to their websites or not. And you can also look at the sources they use within the story itself, whether it is like verified, whether it's a reliable sources or not, like that. So it's not really about which platform is more valid, it's more about the editorial process that went on throughout the process, throughout the the work itself and producing stories. So Kak Wildy, apologize. I think that we come to the end of the session because I have another thing to do. Sorry.
All right. So yeah, I think, and this is the end of our meeting. And many thanks to Kak Aghnia for joining us and giving us some enlightenment today. And I really hope that I can meet you again later in different occasion. And thank you, participants, for being active, super active today. I hope you found lots of new things that can be beneficial for you. I apologize for any mistakes, and I'm Wildy Alia. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. But shall we take a photo then? Like before, shall we take a photo? Like
yeah, sure. Okay, take a photo.
Cool. I think I will put a gallery. So if you can turn on your video, I can take a screen grab. I can lead because I like this photo session.
Okay, you lead it.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Next one, because we have double gallery view. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm signing off. Thank you so much, Kak Wildy,
for joining us. Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you for having me.
Bye. Bye. Oke, ya teman-teman masih ini ya, belum live ya, masih dengan saya. Oke, then for today's assignment, ya, silahkan membuat summary saja, review dari apa yang teman-teman sudah dapatkan pada pagi hari ini terkait dengan media changes and its future. Ya, teman-teman bisa cover terkait dengan how the media emerge, kemudian the history of the media, mainly in Indonesia, from newspaper to the radio and TV station, and then online media, and several challenges journalists face, even in the democratic nation. Ya, nggak hanya pada negara-negara monarki, ternyata di negara demokrasi pun banyak sekali challenges-nya. And then the future of the media itself. Ya, kira-kira from your point of view, nggak harus terkait dengan apa yang sudah diungkapkan atau dijelaskan Kak Aghnia tadi ya. If you have another point of view regarding the future of the media, please write that. Ya, esainya juga sama seperti yang kemarin, singkat saja, padat dan jelas, nggak ada batasan minimal atau maksimal kata, secukupnya yang mencakup ya apa yang kita pelajari pada pagi hari ini. Dikumpulkan seperti biasa Wednesday, right? Wednesday before 12. Is there any question? Ada pertanyaan lain?
Oh ya, sir.
Ya. Nggak ada ya. Kalau misalkan ada, nanti silakan ditanyakan di grup chat. Thank you very much for being super active today. And I'll see you next week, inshallah. Bye-bye. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much.
Waalaikumsalam
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, sir.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.